Love is the strongest magnetic force in the universe. Each time we choose love, we enjoy life more. Each time we choose love, we enhance the quality of our life. Each time we choose love, life seems brighter and clearer. Love heals. Love soothes. Love elevates. Love forgives. Love gives us hope. Love brings us joy and abundance. Love makes us grow. Love feels good. Love makes life colorful. We are all here to learn about love, to love yourself more, and therefore others. Real love is selfless and free from fear. It's joy in the pain. Love more. Love is the thing that makes all things beautiful. Speaking of love,
what an incredible way to honor her father and help others heal from the loss of a loved one due to suicide.
Welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast, and I am your host, Latoya. I created this podcast in honor of my dad, who was an amazing guy. He had an infectious laugh, and his spirit was magnetic. He was the type of guy who made everybody feel like somebody special. If you were to place him in a crowded room of 100 people, my dad would be the smartest person in the entire room. He was an award-winning radio TV broadcast engineer for many years. Born and raised in the city of Detroit, he was one of the first to go to college in his family. And while attending Wayne State University, he developed a lifelong love affair with the game of basketball. He was the shortest point guard on the team, but he could slam dunk the basketball with either hand. By all outward appearances, my dad lived a rewarding life, but there were parts of him that were known to only him. On March 2nd of 2020, my dad's private struggles became public when he took his own life in a murder-suicide. When he died, a part of me died too. And since the tragedy, I have become an advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I also created this beautiful podcast in honor of my dad and others like him who are struggling with the effects of mental health challenges. My podcast, Speaking of Love, is named after a show my dad once hosted called Speaking of Sports. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today as we take a journey in pursuit of the strongest magnetic force on the planet Earth, and that's love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today. My guest, Jay Deutsch, is here all the way from Hudson Valley, New York. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to be, and he's here with me right now, and I'm so excited. I'm going to introduce you to him and tell you all about Mr. Jay. Jay is a solo father of 2 children. He's a suicide loss survivor and a self-love and mindset coach. Jay helps others to make the shift from grieving to healing. Jay has been quoted as saying, "Although my past is a part of me, it does not define me. Please join me in welcoming Jay Deutsch to Speaking of Love. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Jay, you and I, we met. We're a part of a suicide prevention group here. I believe it's a Facebook group. And
Yes.
that's how I met you. I believe it was a couple years ago. And since then, I've been following you and your words of inspiration, the way you encourage others, and the strength that you're carrying after the tragedy that you have endured. You wrote a beautiful post about your loss as a suicide loss survivor. And I was very touched by your words. It was very moving. So thank you for being here and accepting my invitation.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
So have you always lived in New York?
No, I actually grew up on the Jersey Shore. I was a beach bum as a kid. I met Larissa, my late partner, in college, and after she passed, I moved the kids back to her hometown.
Oh, okay. So talk to me about your early years. What was it like for you growing up as a young boy? What were your ambitions?
Well, I didn't have many ambitions as a kid. I had a pretty rough childhood. I was a survivor of divorce. My parents pretty much hated each other the entire time they were together, which was about 13 years. They divorced when I was 8, and the memory plays tricks on us, and we only remember the things that we don't want to a lot. So a lot of the things that I remember from my childhood were arguments, name calling, just a toxic household. I'd like to remember all the fun times, the vacations, and the love, but my memory grasps what was most dominant, which was the toxic environment that me and my sister had to live through as kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
So later in your life, you met what I have read that you define as your soulmate. Tell us about your soulmate.
Well, one thing that I have learned is that we have many soulmates in life. In fact, everybody that we meet is a soulmate and serves some purpose in either learning a lesson or in our growth as spiritual beings. But Larissa and I met freshman year in college. She came from a similar home life where her parents were not in love, yet stayed together, and it was a quite toxic environment. But unfortunately, her parents stayed together until her mom passed from cancer in the early 90s. Larissa and I would describe it as love at first sight. We were both
Aw.
riding the bus to my fraternity house for a party. And the moment we made eye contact, it was like one of those magical moments that you see in a Disney movie. She had a boyfriend at the time, and that was kind of a toxic relationship, which is, we usually get attracted to what we're used to. She started hanging out and spending time with me, and she eventually left him. We got together, and we were inseparable for 26 years. We had 2 kids together. We've lived all over the world. We've pretty much lived out both of our bucket lists. We've done everything that we could ever imagine we wanted to do in life together, and it was something really special.
Wow, that's beautiful, Jay. So the days leading up to the passing of your wife, were there any warning signs? Is there anything you noticed different about your wife?
Um, well, we talk about hindsight and hindsight bias. Looking back now, I see red flags throughout our entire 26 years together. But going through it, at the time, it just seemed like normal behavior. I knew she had issues with depression. I knew she was medicated. But as someone who doesn't experience depression as an illness, of course, everybody gets depressed every now and then. We feel bad. We have sad times. But I don't really think people that don't have depression know what depression really is. So there were times throughout our relationship where she was obviously going through some moments and would just say, "I need some time alone." and she would go off and do her thing, whether it be hanging out with friends or going for a walk or sitting in her room reading or whatever, she chose to do at the time. And I thought nothing of it. There were times where her behavior was completely out of character, and I didn't really think much of it. There were arguments and fights about things that didn't exist. There were times where, for example, we'd be watching TV and all of the sudden her personality would shift and there would be an argument about something that really had no meaning. And,
Mm.
the fact that I loved her as much as I did, I just ignored it, overlooked it, didn't really give it much attention. Towards the end, things got really bad. And they remind me of right after we had our first child. We were living in Costa Rica at the time, and she actually had to be sent back stateside for some psychiatric help. And, I didn't really understand postpartum depression. I thought it was something that all women experienced after they gave birth. So again, it wasn't really an issue to me that I took seriously. She came back and everything was great. And then, 10 years passed between the birth of our son and our daughter. And within a month after my daughter's birth, things started getting really strange. The worst point was she called me at work one day and told me that it was an emergency. I needed to come home immediately. So I left my job, drove home, and when I walked in, she was standing in the kitchen holding a backpack or a duffel bag. And when we made eye contact, I didn't see her. It was almost like
Mm.
I was looking at someone else standing in her body. And she looked at me and she said, "There's nothing left here for us. I'm leaving. I need you to, take care of Emma, our daughter, who was a few months old at the time." And she ran out the door, got in the car, and left. And I really didn't understand what was going on, why this was happening. Everything seemed fine between us. We had no unusual problems in the relationship. And I found out later that she drove to her dad's house and stole a bottle of painkillers from his refrigerator and then came back to the house and filled her backpack with a steak knife and some alcohol. And she took off into the woods, and she was gone for several hours. The police came, the state police came. They had dogs, helicopters. I mean, it was a full-on manhunt to find her. And the next day, she came strolling up the driveway like nothing ever happened. Like it was like she was out for an afternoon walk. But she was
Wow.
covered in blood. She was dirty. She had cut herself several times. Uh, the police convinced her to go to the hospital for a psych evaluation. And unfortunately, some members of her family who worked for the state felt that it would be an inconvenience if their family name got into the system. So he coached her into what she should say to be released. So during her psych evaluation, she came up with all of the textbook answers. I had a rough day. I don't know what happened. I'm feeling better now. And they refused to treat her. They gave her a muscle relaxer and sent her home.
Mm.
We followed up with a trip to her primary care physician. It probably took a week or two to get an appointment, but we got her into the doctor. And because of all the misconceptions and societal beliefs about mental illness and depression, the doctor gave her another antidepressant, a sleeping pill, and Xanax for her anxiety.
Mm.
Days later, I got into an argument with her father, who owned the house we were living in, and he ended up kicking us out. So Larissa, my 10-year-old son and newborn daughter, pretty much had to go and find a new place to live. Things were fine to a degree for the next 3 years, and things really started to take a turn for the worse. The arguments, the meaningless fighting, and one night we just had a real heck of an argument, and we both said some things that we didn't mean, or at least I didn't mean. And she left. She grabbed a backpack again and walked out. I thought she was walking to her brother's house, who lived about 2 miles away. So me and the kids went to sleep, and we were woken up at about 5:30 in the morning by banging on the door. I went to answer the door, and the police said, you need to open the door. At first, I thought it was her with her brother and the police coming to take the kids away from me. So I refused to open the door. And when I finally opened the door, they showed me a photo of her tattoo and the empty bottle of Xanax, and informed me that they found her on the grass in front of my son's school about 6 blocks away. And that was, the end of all things for me, pretty much.
Wow, Jay, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry for your loss. Wow. So that is definitely a life-changing experience. And
Oh, absolutely.
I look at your posts and I read the words and the way you put things together. You have not, I know this has been difficult for you, but I feel like you have really worked to get to the other side of the grief and the pain. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey of strength and how you came to be the man of strength that you are now?
Well, my story at the beginning was the same as pretty much everyone else that I talked to. My first thoughts when the police were standing there at the door was to grab the cop's gun and be with her. Uh,
Yeah.
I couldn't see going on with life. And I remembered my kids upstairs in bed. My daughter was 3 and my son was 13. And for the first few years, they were my only reason for continuing. I lost my job 3 days later. My boss got angry with me for not calling her in person to tell her what happened. I just picked up the phone. I called into work and I said, Larissa killed herself. I'm going to be out for a while. And I hung up. That was the least of my concerns. My stepmom came in from Florida. She was literally at my door in 4 hours. My mom and my sister showed up later and caused a scene, so I had to have them removed. And we lost our apartment 6 months later because I got fired from my job and I couldn't afford rent.
Wow.
Luckily, I had enough in savings to move the kids, and I figured I would move them back to her hometown because Larissa came from a huge family, which I was a part of for 26 years. I lived in her house. Her cousins called me Uncle Jay. And after the first Thanksgiving, they pretty much abandoned us. They blamed me for her suicide. And in the last 9 years, we've walked past countless family members in the supermarket like we're strangers. Um, I took it really, really hard. I grieved really hard. For about 4.5 years, I went to the bar 7 nights a week to try and drink away the pain and the feelings, classic avoidance. All I cared about was numbing the pain and getting through another day and then waking up with a smile on my face for my kids. I did the best I could to get my kids help. My son went to the local hospice, to their children's bereavement group for 3.5 years, where he learned, everything you're feeling is normal. It's not a therapy environment where he was judged, labeled, or medicated. It was just a group of kids who also lost someone they loved and got a chance to talk about their feelings with grief professionals. My daughter was too young, so we had to wait until she was 6. So she went for about 6 months. Because she was so young, she didn't really have many memories or an understanding of what really happened. Um, every day for me was the same. I woke up, put on that mask, pretended to be okay, went to work, did my job, came home, fed the kids, and then, I said to my son, take care of your sister, I'm out. And I went to the bar, drinking, doing drugs, seeking validation, looking for people to take away my pain, trying to connect with people, not realizing the toxic situations I was getting myself into, and the toxic people I was attaching myself to. And then one day, I was driving and I had a moment of I guess you could call it a blackout, kind of when you're driving and you get to where you're going, and then you're like, how did I get here? I don't remember. So I came to sitting across from her grave at the cemetery, and I was angry, filled with hate. I really hated her for leaving me alone with the kids. And I sat in the car probably for about 15, 20 minutes, crying, punching the steering wheel, screaming. And I got out of the car, and it was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, no breeze. And I got hit with a gust of wind that almost knocked me over. And in that moment, all of the anger and hatred just got stripped from my body. And I was standing there, and all I could feel was love.
Aww.
And that was what changed me. That's what I want
Wow.
to feel every day.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much the beginning of my healing journey. That was the power of love changed me.
So, what do you think was the turning point? What turned you to that direction of love?
That's the power of love. I
Mm,
can't explain it. It's who we are, it's what we're made of. And in that moment where the grief and the anger and the sadness and the regret and all those emotions that make up grief were missing, I had a moment of clarity as
mm-hmm.
to what this is all about. And it changed my view of loss. It changed my view of life. It changed my view of who I am and why I'm here. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a very special moment for me.
Jay, I want to read one of your most recent posts. I want to share this with our audience because I was really touched by this. It says, to truly love, you must first learn to heal from past experiences. Unresolved pain and trauma can cloud your ability to love. Be vulnerable. Be true to yourself and others, and allow your heart to open fully. Healing is a journey of self reflection, forgiveness, and letting go. When you make the choice to let go of the past, you become a source of love that is healthier, deeper, more fulfilling. Remember, love thrives when we embody our true, authentic, healed selves into it. That is the most powerful meaning of love when it comes to healing from a loss. You are
Yes.
amazing.
Thank you.
What inspired you to write this? Let's talk to me about your mindset at the moment when you made that post.
Well, mindset has been the biggest part of my journey. Since that shift so many years ago, I have been doing research into neuroscience, neurobiology. I would say that I had a pretty crazy spiritual awakening, and everything that I thought I knew about myself and life and why I'm here and who I am kind of disappeared, and the veil was lifted for me. Um, Love is pretty much the meaning of life. It's why we are here.
Mm,
And in learning to shift my mindset from constantly ruminating about the past, about things that don't exist, things that used to be, or the what ifs, coulda, woulda, shouldas. My dad used to say to me as a kid, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but you didn't. So let it go. And,
Mm.
that always stuck with me, but more now than ever before. Most people spend their entire lives thinking in the past or in the future, and they miss out on the beauty of this moment.
Mm.
They're always worried about either what they did wrong or what they have to do next. And
Yes.
in go, go, go existence, we miss out on the beauty of the present moment. And one thing that I have made, drastic changes in my life is living in this moment now and focusing on love and all of the things that are, the things that do exist with love and gratitude. I could wake
Wow.
up and I could think about my problems and what I have to do, the bills, work, this, that, the other thing. Or I could just lay there in the moment and be grateful for that first breath of the day,
Mm-hmm.
to be grateful that I have a roof over my head and that my kids are here and that we have food and just all of these things that add to the beauty and value of life.
Mm-hmm. And that's the definition of love. During this podcast, I always ask the $1,000,000 question, how do you define love? But that post that you wrote is truly the definition of love. So when you're connecting with people as a mindset coach, what is your intention behind doing that kind of work?
Well, my intention is to spread love and to awaken people to the power of love. And, a lot of people, when we lose someone we love, we fear letting go of grief because a lot of people believe that that is their last connection to their person. And
Right.
that the more they love the person, the more they have to prove that through pain and suffering. A lot of people
Mm.
believe that grief is love with no place to go, or that the countless euphemisms in the mental health community, in the grief community, that just prolong pain and suffering, which is literally the opposite of love. Love is the highest vibrational frequency that we can attain as vibrational beings, and grief and anger and sadness and pain are so low that they're almost polar opposites. And I
Yes.
say that my main intention in the people that I encounter and contact is to remember that love always has a place to go, whether it's
Yes.
within or to the good, happy memories we have of the ones that we've lost, to other people, to life, to nature, to the earth, just to embody love, and the
Mm-hmm.
grief just fades.
Wow, that's beautiful, Jay. What do you love most about the work that you do?
I'd say that aha moment that I see in people's eyes when they make the
Mm.
shift from grieving to healing, and they realize that in that instant when I can see them realize that the love never dies. It never goes away. It never stops. I mean, it's been
Mm-hmm.
over 9 years for me, and I look at her picture and I smile. And I've been in several serious relationships since my loss, and I have fallen in love again. And one thing I always say is anyone that I've ever said I love you to, I still love, no matter what they did to hurt me, no matter how the relationship ended. Love is eternal, but relationships are temporary.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
You are a solo dad. You're raising your two children. How are they coping right now?
Well, it was rough for my son. He was 13 at the time, and he was a big mama's boy. He loved his mom. Uh,
Mm,
he, he had a really rough time uh, because of all of the stigmas around mental illness and mental health and the beliefs in Western medicine. His doctor put him on antidepressants very soon after the loss out of a fear that it was hereditary and that he would fall into mom's footsteps. And for about
mm,
3.5 years, I watched my son turn into a zombie. He went from one of the most popular kids in his friend circle to sitting in the dark in his room alone. And he didn't play any video games. He didn't go out. He started cutting school and failing classes. So that was about when I started doing my research into neuroscience and depression and pharmaceuticals and psychology. And after I learned what I did about antidepressants, I went to his doctor and demanded that he come off them. And, she gave me her chemical imbalance theory and how it runs in the family and all of the sales slogans that her big pharma salesman told her. And
yeah.
I would much rather my son figure out who he is unmedicated than watch him deteriorate in the dark.
Wow.
So we took him off the antidepressants, and literally within 6 weeks, he was back to his old self, hanging out with friends, connecting with people back in school, doing work, playing games. My daughter, because she was only 3 when we lost her mom, it was a little easier for her to make the transition. We got her into daycare really quickly, so everything was new and exciting for her. She was meeting new people, making friends, learning new things. And, one thing that I've always taken very seriously is my role as a parent. So I
Mm.
put mom and the dad. I learned how to braid hair and, to go clothes shopping with her and all the great things that a mom would have done. I filled those shoes the best I could. So,
Aw.
today my son is 22. He has a fantastic girlfriend who he lives with. He makes great money as a plumber. He loves his job. He loves his life. My daughter is one of the most popular girls in her class. She gets great grades. She has a great mindset. She's very positive, and I'm just really proud of both of them.
Yes, and it's all because of you and your commitment to being a great dad. A lot of times when we experience trauma and loss and grief, we tend to forget about those that are most important to us and around us. And I'm
Yeah.
so happy that you were able to focus your love, attention, and energy on your children and look at what they have become in
Uh, I had
spite.
a great I had a great role model. My dad, he taught me a lot of really important lessons in life about choosing love and choosing yourself, and
Wow.
to not care how your own quest for self-love affects other people. That self-love is not selfish, and that you have to
Mm.
put yourself first and do what's best for yourself and those you love.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. That's amazing. So, what's next for you, Jay?
What's next? I don't know.
Are
That's
you
the
working?
future.
Are you working on any special projects right now, or
uh,
just
I started writing a book a while back, and I've kind of put it on the back burner. I was thinking about getting back into it and writing a little bit more. But, as I said, I focus on the present moment. I go with the flow, and whatever's meant to be will be. One thing that I don't do is I don't do checklists. I don't think about the future. I don't stress. I don't worry. I just, I'm a stick floating down the river, and where the river takes me is where I'll happy to be.
well,
It's,
Jay, I think you should pursue writing that book because when I read your Facebook post and your tributes to Larissa, you're already writing the book. It's there. You
yeah,
just got to put it together. You are an amazing writer and your
thank you.
writing is very heartfelt. So not only am I reading your words and comprehending your message, but your message, I feel it deep within. I resonate with that. So I think you should do it, Jay. You should write that book.
Yeah, sometimes I have trouble gathering all of my thoughts and organizing them together. It's just there's so much going on, so
Sure,
much
sure.
emotion
I
and
get.
passion.
And
Yeah,
Jay, there was a conversation I was having it was on Facebook. I think I had posted something related to the expensive, how things are so expensive in the grocery store. And I wrote a post and I said, well, we're all struggling right now. Life is so hard. The economy is bad. And you wrote into the post and you changed my perspective. You said, we are not all struggling. Struggling is a mindset. And if you think in your mind that you're struggling, then you're going to struggle. And I thought about that and I go, wow, he's right. He's right. I'm
yeah.
not struggling. So thank you for that.
One thing that I learned in neuroscience is the things that we tell ourselves create the reality we experience. And
Mm,
in depression, that's one of the biggest problems we have right now is people who are suffering from depression tell themselves, I'm suffering from depression.
mm,
And what we're not taught is that the subconscious mind, which is responsible for 95% of who we are and what we think, what we believe, what we do, what we say, records everything we say as fact. You know,
mm,
our brain is literally floating in the dark in our skulls with no concept of reality whatsoever, other than what our limited senses tell it and what we choose to say to ourselves. And if we
mm-hmm.
say, I am struggling with this thing, the brain hears the battle cry, turns on fight or flight response, turns off the ability to think cognitively, turns off, lowers the immune system, turns up the cortisol and stress levels, and prepares for battle. And just by
Yes.
saying, this is a struggle, I hate this, I can't do this is a problem, the brain creates a belief system that prepares for nothing other than battle.
Struggle. Yeah.
So
Wow.
every time we go to the supermarket, our mind says, look at all of those high prices.
Yes.
Look at the little money we have. How are we going to make
Yeah.
this? And, my mindset walking into the supermarket is if I want steak, I'm getting the biggest filet mignon on the shelf
Wow.
because
So,
I can
Gee, you don't,
afford.
so when you go in the grocery store and you see the expensive prices, you said you buy the biggest filet mignon, but what if you overblow your budget? What do you do then,
I don't
Jay?
budget. I don't budget. I
Ah,
spend.
really?
I do not have a lack mindset. I have an abundance mindset. Every dollar I spend comes back to me times 10.
Wow.
When I
Wow.
need
That's
money,
amazing.
money is an abundant resource in this society. There's more money than water. We
Wow.
just have to focus our attention on how we want to experience life.
Yes. I
Daughter
love
comes
that.
in and says, Dad, can we go shopping? The answer is always yes.
Wow.
We went to the mall the other day and she said, Dad, I need new bras. Now, the first bra that I bought her was a little sports bra, training bra from Walmart for, I don't know, $7, $8. And she wore that for as long as she could. And she said she wanted to go to Victoria's Secrets and get real bras. And, yes. She picked out a few that she liked. She got professionally measured. Everything was the right size. And when the girl at the counter rung everything up and she told me it was $168, and then my daughter turned around and grabbed a bottle of perfume that she wanted. And honestly, I just handed my credit card over, paid the bill. It put a smile on my daughter's face that's priceless.
Wow. That's beautiful.
And I don't worry about tomorrow because it doesn't
Mm.
doesn't exist.
Wow.
I don't worry about the rent being due in 9 days because 9 days doesn't exist.
Wow.
I
That's a
take my
beautiful way
bills,
to live.
the
Stress
date
free.
they're due, I put them on my shelf, and when the due date comes, I pay the bills and the money's there. It's always there.
It's always there. Wow.
And when we have that mindset, our brain creates opportunities to make sure that that is the truth.
Hmm.
That's how the brain works.
I have to work on that, Jay, because I'm always thinking about tomorrow, making sure everything is okay, making
You
sure I
know,
have enough
Think
supplies,
about
making sure.
tomorrow. It's always going to be a day in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Thank you for
we
that.
experience it depends on what we think, do, or say today. And if we
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't have enough, what do you expect back from the universe other than not enough?
Wow. Wow. That's valuable. That's incredible. So, Jay, if someone is watching or listening to this podcast right now and they're having thoughts of suicide, they don't want to be here anymore, life has been hard, they're worried about tomorrow, what advice would you give that person to hold on?
That's something that I've probably given more thought to than the average person over the last 9 years. Because looking back, that hindsight bias, if I could have, if I only knew what I knew now, what I know now about depression and neuroscience and thoughts, emotions, and feelings, you know, that maybe I could have saved her, thought always comes to mind. But at the same time, knowing that we have to accept the past unconditionally, I try not to think those thoughts, that everything happens exactly as it should to teach us lessons about our own strength and resilience.
Hmm.
And if you're at that point where you're thinking about giving up, just know that those thoughts are lies.
Hmm.
They're it's a culmination of chemicals, emotions, feelings, and beliefs that for some reason we choose to accept. I would say reach out, talk to somebody. If you're feeling unloved, remember that that's just a belief. It's not truth,
Hmm.
it's not fact. If your past was hard on you, let it go and create the future that you desire to experience today. There's always a reason to live. And I personally know, knowing that I was ready to give up after my loss, looking back, yeah, it was hard, it was a terrible time in my life, but I love my life now. There's not a thing that I would change. And we
Wow.
can all get to that point if we make that choice to heal, to learn, to grow, and to let go of the things that hurt.
Wow. That is so beautiful, so powerful. Jay, I really admire everything that you have accomplished. I love what you represent, what you stand for. You have gone through incredible pain, incredible loss, and you sit before me today and you empower me. You inspire me. You've blessed my platform with your presence, and I thank you for that. I bow
That's
to
it.
your excellence. Thank you.
Thank you.
When
Very
the
kind of you.
pages of your when the pages of your life are reviewed and your mission here, Jay, on the planet Earth is complete, what do you most want to be remembered for?
How much I loved life.
Wow,
That's it.
I can see it. It's
How much I
beautiful.
gave. Yeah. How many happy people I left behind.
Wow. You are amazing.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we conclude the interview today? How can
Um,
we get you if we want to connect with your mindset?
If you'd like to connect with me, I'm on Facebook at Self Love and Mindset Coach, one word. I have several groups that I've started to help people learn to change their mindset. I have a self-love group called Learning to Love Yourself. I have a group that's just daily dose of positivity on your feed. It's called Positive Quotes, Memes, and Inspirations. And I have a special group that I started a few years ago called Life After Loss. And it is and it isn't a grief support group, because grief support groups, from what I've seen on Facebook and online, are safe places for people to go and share their grief. There's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of bitterness, and there's a lot of validation. And the group that I started is a healing support group. It's a place for those who have been through grief and want to see the other side. It's grown to over 1,400 members, and it's a negativity-free zone.
Wow.
Most of the posts, if not all of the posts, are about happy, positive experiences, healing, growth, letting go, and learning how to navigate through the darkness back to the light. My website is selfloveandmindsetcoach.com. And, I welcome anybody who's looking to find more love, more self-love, and more healing in their journey.
Aww. Thank you, Jay. Thank you. You are amazing. This is beautiful. If anyone listening or watching has missed any portion of this podcast, the podcast is always available on YouTube. This episode is available on Facebook and all the major podcast platforms as well. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So if you've missed it, you can always come back and check us out. This will conclude my 140th episode of Speaking of Love, the podcast. This month of September is Suicide Prevention Month. So I just want you all to know that if you're having thoughts of suicide, please dial 988. That's the suicide lifeline number. Just like you would dial 911 in an emergency, there's now a line established 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with trained professionals to help you. Or if you have a friend who's feeling suicidal, you can call that number, or you can text the suicide lifeline number 741-741. You can text the word help. So thank you all for being here. Jay, thank you for taking the time to be here with me today.
Thank you
And
for
you and
having
I,
me, Latoya.
yes,
I
we will continue.
appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. We will continue to stay connected, and I hope you all have a good week. I will be back next Saturday for another episode of Speaking of Love, and we're going to divulge some information regarding the topic of murder-suicide. So next week will be pretty intense, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. So I will see you all next Saturday at 12 o'clock noon. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.